Live from Rialto, California, Mark Flores presents the Pay-Per-View Wrestling Podcast. Listen in as Mark discusses Survivor Series 2016 and NXT Takeover Toronto. It's all coming up on the Pay-Per-View Wrestling Podcast. Now here's your host, Mark Flores. All right, perfect. Thank you guys for tuning in to another great episode of the Pay-Per-View Wrestling Podcast. Tonight we're going to cover NXT Toronto and Survivor Series 2016. We're doing both at the same time, same place. I just got finished watching a little bit of Monday Night Raw just to make sure I had everything checked off as far as what I kind of wanted to see as far as post Survivor Series 2016. But nonetheless, both pay-per-views to me were pretty exciting, and I want to go into detail with you on both events. But first and foremost, let's take care of the commercial spots by our proud sponsor, Game Swappers. Hello, this is Mark Flores from the Mark F Podcast channel, here to let you know that this podcast episode is brought to you by Game Swappers. Come on down to Game Swappers, located at 4520 Holt Boulevard in Montclair, California, to buy, sell, and trade your current and retro video games from Nintendo Entertainment System to the PS4. Keep in mind that if you share any one of my podcast episodes through any form of social media, you'll get 10% off your entire purchase, or you'll get 10% more towards your retro game trade-ins. Follow Game Swappers on Instagram at GAMESWAPPERS. That's GAMESWAPPERS. Game Swappers. Buy, sell, and trade. Alright, perfect. So, NXT Takeover took place in Toronto, so let's go ahead and take down the first match of the night, which was actually taken care of by two Canadians themselves. The glorious Bobby Roode versus the Perfect 10 Ty Dillinger. The first thing I noticed off the bat of the match is the enigma of Ty Dillinger. He is extremely over, especially in his hometown, actually his home country of Canada. Everyone was saying 10 tons of times, and I'm going to get into that later on tonight in the show. But Ty Dillinger put on an early offense, and then a few things to note with the match itself was that Bobby rolls into the ring after he gets a couple strikes done into him by Ty Dillinger. He comes in the ring, and then he goes on his knees, and then he says, no, wait, stop, no more. And then it looks like the 10 symbol that Ty Dillinger puts up. He says stop in a similar fashion to Ty's 10 taunt. It's similar to that of the Van Buren Boys episode from Seinfeld, where Kramer mistakenly put up an 8 as in representation to Martin Van Buren being the 8th president. Nonetheless, it was just so funny to see that, because it was good to see that, crazy shticks like that are being placed into the WWE ring again. It's very comedic, especially, it's like a break from the norm of this intense rivalry, which is between Bobby Roode and Ty Dillinger. The moves on display by both wrestlers represented a very intense rivalry. I like that. Bobby Roode actually did put on a great suplex sequence later on in the match, but as expected, what we had here was one of those matches where Ty Dillinger is just the enhancement talent for NXT up-and-comers, and Bobby Roode ended up getting the 1-2-3 via a DDT. So, nothing more to put up on that match. Bobby Roode's extremely over, and Ty Dillinger's extremely over, so both of those situations right now won't be hindered in any way. The next match we have is the Authors of Pain versus TM61 for the finals of the Dusty Classic. First and foremost, I want to tell everyone that TM61 is a hell of a tag team. These guys, if they get their gimmick together, because I'm really not seeing their identity right now as far as those two guys. As soon as I get more clarification on that, I think these guys are going to be a pretty hot tag team if they get called up to the main roster. But the first spot of the night was a senton spot from Shane of TM61 from the crane that Paul Ellering was hanging off of in this Dusty Classic. See, the stipulation of the Authors of Pain versus TM61 match in the finals of the Dusty Classic was that Paul Ellering was to be hoisted up on top of a crane. This was just done as to plug the new toy that they have from Mattel looks eerily similar, but I liked Nick Miller's hot tag sequence later in the match. It was done very well, and it actually ended with a moonsault for good measure, which I thought was really cool. And this is one of the first times I was able to get a good first look at TM61's finisher, this double press slam that they have. I forget what the finisher signature is actually called, but to me it looks just like a press slam where they would just get them up in the air, like how the Spirit Squad would get someone in the air, and they would just slam them down. I thought it was pretty amazing myself. The match could have been done without the shenanigans. What ended up happening is that Paul Ellering drops a chain into the ring from the top of the crane, and then one of the Authors of Pain actually gets it and tries to punch. I think it was Nick Miller that he tried to punch, and then I guess they ended up botching it because this chain ended up going into the audience in Toronto. The commentators did a good job by not bringing so much attention to it, which is good, but it still was really odd to see nonetheless. But this is really good for the Authors of Pain, because Authors of Pain ended up walking away the winners of the Dusty Classic. This does nothing but to help solidify themselves as a top-tier tag team. And this is good because TM61 actually looks ready to go for the main roster if they ever decide to go up to that position. But the Authors of Pain still are pretty green. They have some fine-tuning to check out before they end up going anywhere else. But nonetheless, great match done by TM61 and the Authors of Pain. I had no problems with it whatsoever. On to the tag team match of the night. DIY versus the Revival. Tommaso Ciampa and Johnny Gargano versus the Revival. Dash and Dawson. Johnny Gargano and Scott Dawson had a great opening chain sequence where they were just exchanging holds and tosses. One thing I wanted to note too as well, early on, this match was already kicked into overdrive. Then set the pace for the rest of the match, and this match never let up. It was insane all the way through. I enjoyed seeing Johnny Gargano's hot tag sequence that ended with a running belly to belly. The one thing to note about this match too, by the way, is that the Revival's moveset was on full display. So we had Tommaso Ciampa doing a triple suplex in tribute, it looked like, to the one and only Chris Benoit, and it ended with a flying knee. And Gargano and Ciampa, man, when they put on these strong style kind of moves with flying knees and everything, it looks very, very intense, very authentic. I worry about strong style wrestling, but if it could be done well, like they've been doing, I mean, they can avoid serious injury. The Revival do this move, and I'm going to tell you guys this because for the people that haven't seen it yet, but only heard about the results, the Revival ended up putting one of the best two-move combos I've ever seen in a long time, where Dash Wilder ended up uppercutting Tommaso Ciampa, and then he ended up uppercutting Johnny Gargano, and then Scott Dawson ended up German suplexing, finishing it with the German suplex. That was done so smooth. I enjoy seeing move sequences like that because you never get those in quick succession like you would imagine. But nonetheless, DIY ended up coming away with the victory. It was a great tag team match. I myself was really particular about the Revival. I really saw them as a copy of Tully Blanchard and Arn Anderson. But when you look at what they can bring to the table, these guys do not let up on the entertainment. They had both tag matches of the year nominations are already taken up by the Revival, and that is no exaggeration whatsoever. Congratulations to DIY for being put over by the Revival. It is great to see these up-and-coming kids, Johnny Gargano and Tommaso Ciampa, grab a title finally. It was a long journey awaited, but it was good. The pop was great, and this doesn't take anything from the Revival because they're still a damn good heel tag team. The next match we have is Mickie James versus Asuka. Mickie James hasn't been in a WWE ring in quite a long time. And then you have Asuka with the NXT Women's Champion. So we had a little title match here to deal with. One thing to point out about this match is that a majority of this match was theatrics. And the best part about it is that it told a story. And that's what is important. People try to say that some matches are slow, some matches are slow-paced, but in a negative light. You could still have a slow-paced match and be entertaining. This was one of them. It was a lot of bickering back and forth between Mickie James and Asuka. It was a lot of build-up and then it goes into the actual wrestling part of the match. When you have a wrestling match, you need to tell a story, and that's a very, very important factor when you do one of these type of matches where there's a lot riding on and a lot of dialogue beforehand. Where Mickie James hasn't came back to the ring in quite a long time. Asuka's the new a crowned NXT champion, and she's taken down everyone else, but she hasn't taken down Mickie James. So this is something to focus on. Very important. It was an impressive outing from Mickie James, in my opinion. Her Hurricane Rana from the outside of the ring down to the mat. I don't know how Asuka survived that. That looked very, very painful. Also, Asuka then answered back from that actual spot with a German suplex on the outside. A lot of high risk spots. Definitely got a pop from the crowd. And then you had Mickie James doing the Muda Lock, which I didn't think she was actually. I didn't know she had that in her moveset arsenal. So it was a great match between Mickie James and Asuka. But what ended up happening is that Asuka was able to get the chicken wing lock onto Mickie James. Mickie James taps out, but wow, that was really good to see Mickie James come out of go into that match. Not a favorite, but very entertaining. It was definitely great to see her in the ring and actually perform things she hasn't done before. And it's great to see that she's actually able to still perform at a high level. That's one thing I can take from this. And as far as the projection of Asuka goes now, WWE still has something to worry about as far as finding new talent for her to either build up with, because she's at a position where she has essentially monopolized her position as far as being the number one women's contender herself. You know, she is the woman to beat. Now, hopefully NXT can develop something interesting for the next following couple weeks to have someone actually go out against her. The next match we have here is Samoa Joe versus Shinsuke Nakamura. Going in, you guys know that this is going to be a very gritty match with insane bumps and strong style from Shinsuke Nakamura, and it didn't disappoint. The match beginning in and out of the ring, tons of variety. There was a double knee driver from Samoa Joe that I have never seen before that he's done. Joe and Shinsuke's strikes. And then you had Joe doing some strikes with the knee bar submission combo that was done beautifully. Joe's suicide dive. And at this point, Shinsuke Nakamura was on the back end, on the receiving end of all this punishment. And then Shinsuke Nakamura tries to come and rally back. But then Samoa Joe comes in with the Dragon Suplex, then the Chimeraplex, and then it goes to the outside. And then you see the only advantage Shinsuke has at this point, because he's rallying back. So they're on the outside, and Shinsuke Nakamura ends up getting in this little kerfuffle with the actual referee. The referee gets blindsided, and then Samoa Joe hits Shinsuke Nakamura in the groin. Samoa Joe then grabs Shinsuke Nakamura, rolls him back into the ring, and ends up initiating the muscle. Oh yeah, after Shinsuke Nakamura gets hit in the groin, Samoa Joe then gives him like a pseudo rock bottom onto the steel steps. That was a huge spot. The crowd I heard a bunch of O's from the crowd. Then Shinsuke Nakamura gets rolled into the ring for the Muscle Buster, and then Samoa Joe becomes the two-time NXT champion. Wow. So this kind of throws my plans into jeopardy because I anticipated Samoa Joe actually getting called up to the main roster in a surprise move, but no. So now we have this situation where Samoa Joe is now the NXT champion. So what do we do from here? Do we have Samoa Joe stay in NXT for like 6 more months or a couple months? And then, because Shinsuke Nakamura does have a rematch, essentially. So this might drag on for a little bit more before any of these two are called up to the main roster. So that's something to worry about, in my opinion. But overall, NXT TakeOver Toronto was, for a 5-match card versus the card that Survivor Series had, they really didn't stand a chance as far as time length and match stipulations and all that, because that 5 versus the matches that Survivor Series had weren't going to come close, but there was tons of more quality within NXT TakeOver. I definitely enjoyed it, and I hope you guys did as well, because it was a lot of note taking from that one. So let's see what we have here for Survivor Series. Survivor Series 2016. So we had the Team Raw versus Team SmackDown's women's match. A couple of things to note from this match in particular. Team Raw was represented by Alicia Fox, Nia Jax, Bayley, Charlotte, and Sasha Banks. And SmackDown's women's match roster was represented by Carmella, Alexa Bliss, Natalya, being the replacement for Nikki Bella, who was injured at the Survivor Series from a staged beatdown, Naomi, and Becky Lynch. So one thing to note here is that Carmella needs to... I think she's... You know what? I'm not telling her to stop doing the moonwalk. I'm just saying that if she's just doing that to get heat because she's a heel, then she's doing a good job. So I can't misconstrue, heat from actual being irritating. So she's getting heat. So keep up the moonwalk, Carmella, if you want to grab that heat, because you are getting tons of it. I enjoyed the variety of the eliminations of this match. You had Naomi being counted out. You had several surprise upsets within this match. It was a great way to put some of the lesser known divas out and over. But all in all, Team Raw ended up winning, and the last part of the match set up a feud between Charlotte and Bayley. It's a great women's match. A little bit of miscommunication here, but with something of this scale, where there's 10 people in the ring, there's going to be a little bit of that, because some of the moves may not go different ways as well. The next match we had was Sami Zayn and The Miz for the Intercontinental title. So the reason The Miz is the champion and Dolph Ziggler isn't, because heading into Survivor Series 2016, you really can't have a face versus face match going into a high tier pay-per-view. People are only going to remember these matches by the people who they were facing and what type of stipulation was going in. Yes, the match, the feud heading into this was was very much in its infancy, so you couldn't really build anything more from The Miz and Sami Zayn. The belt leaving Dolph Ziggler so soon made it really hard for many fans to believe that the title would be leaving anytime soon. You figure that you get the belt a week before the pay-per-view starts, and you do not want the title to look like it's being the main attraction in a game of hot potato. You cannot have that. You can't have this title being shifted around from place to place. It just will lose the prestige of the title. That is very important as far as titles go, because back in the 80s and 70s with the territory days, belts were only contested against probably on a yearly basis, bi-monthly basis, 3-4 months. Very sparingly were these titles up for grabs, and when it was up for grabs, then it was really important. But for the sake of pay-per-views on a monthly basis, it's a money grab now at this point. But you could still make these titles look important. You just have to keep the titles on people for long times, for a long amount of times. Just because you need to have you need to have the heel get over, you need to have the face get over as well. But mainly about this match, Sami Zayn and The Miz. I like the dynamic between the two, and I can see there's tons of potential within the two, The Miz and Sami Zayn. I could see it, and it's very undeniable. But it seems that The Miz's focus is primarily on Daniel Bryan, and Sami Zayn essentially has no focus except for the feud that he has at hand. He's quick to shift his perception on whatever feud he's up against, and that's not a fault of his. That's actually a good attribute, but that focus can be placed onto somebody who he can have a long feud with. Like if he relived that Adrian Neville Sami Zayn NXT thing, that'd be great to see as well, but it's hard to see if Neville's ever going to get back into the fold. Nonetheless, Sami Zayn was distracted by Maurice ringing the bell prematurely. The Miz is able to capitalize on the distraction with the schoolboy roll-up, and he was tugging the tights as well, again, to gain the heel heat of being a very obnoxious 6-time Intercontinental Champion. The Miz ends up winning via pinfall. So, the next match that we have here is the Survivor Series Tag Team match. Team Raw versus Team SmackDown. I thought this was a great platform for Cesaro, Jason Jordan, and American Alpha. The Usos I cannot compliment enough because they're always consistent, and today is no different. The best move of the night was the rolling German suplex from Chad Gable, where he was able to roll up Cesaro and end up getting him into a German suplex, and that was an amazing feat. I think that's like one of the best moves being brought out from Chad Gable. And the thing about American Alpha is that they're going to get great really, really quickly. So, all in all, Cesaro ended up surviving. Cesaro and Sheamus ended up surviving for quite a long time, and then they ended up getting the victory for Team Raw. So Team Raw has now won the women's match and the tag team match. So that's what we had there. The next match was Kalisto and Brian Kendrick. I think this match, for the size of these two, was done very well. I enjoy that Brian Kendrick gives this, I always have the upper hand look, like he's a conniving trickster. You can always enjoy Kalisto because he's always going to have that underdog Rey Mysterio type of vibe. So you're always going to enjoy him. You're always going to have a smile when you see him. There's not going to be a bad perception of Kalisto, except if he ever decides to turn heel. So the match between these two was definitely at an accelerated pace. But one thing I had to point out is, where was this crowd? It was so quiet. Especially during the Spanish Fly spot. I thought that was done very well. There should have been like either a round of applause, but it was still a risky spot from Kalisto onto Brian Kendrick. It was done from the top of the apron down to the ground on the outside, so it was very risky to do. But to add more measure to the danger, Kalisto ended up doing a suicide dive from inside of the ring to the outside. Tons of risky spots in this cruiserweight title match, but then you had a random Baron Corbin interruption. Baron Corbin interrupts this match and causes both of these guys to not compete the rest of the match because it was a DQ. Baron Corbin is way over 205 pounds. Baron Corbin's gimmick is that he cares about no one else but himself. Baron Corbin and his gimmick do not follow suit with the cruiserweights, or does not follow suit with either Brian Kendrick or Kalisto. Why would WWE book this? I am still confused. It's just, you really try to take these outcomes and draw out patterns or draw out, whoa, this is why. This is why C happened, because B and A ended up happening. But in the case of this situation, B is Kalisto and Brian Kendrick have no pre-existing feud with Baron Corbin. A, it's a cruiserweight match under 205 pounds. Baron Corbin exceeds that. And matter of fact, we even have a C because Baron Corbin's gimmick doesn't even match it doesn't even match what's going on within this match. He doesn't need to interrupt anyone because he's only concerned about himself, and this situation has nothing to do with him. Which equals up to D. Why did WWE book this? I can't draw it up. The next match we have here, because of the DQ by Baron Corbin for Kalisto and the Brian Kendrick. Team Raw versus Team SmackDown. The Survivor Series lineup here is extremely star-studded. You even have the addition of Shane McMahon. You have great exchanges from Seth Rollins, Dean Ambrose, and Roman Reigns collectively trying to do this little Shield reunion, as I'll explain later. It was a showcase for Braun Strowman. Shane's elbow to Braun on the outside was a classic spot. Dean gets eliminated early. And then he decides to come back and harass AJ Styles some more in the build-up to their TLC match in a few weeks. And then the Shield decide to reunite and end up giving a triple powerbomb to AJ Styles. Dean doesn't care at this point because he's already eliminated, so he comes back in to, put the icing on the cake in that situation. So what went down was this, is that not necessarily, no feuds were being built besides the feud coming up with TLC. And nothing else was built up out of this besides Braun Strowman and James Ellsworth probably meeting again at some point. But after all this, all we had was Shane McMahon possibly suffering a concussion and pretty much nothing else. But what I did enjoy about this match is that it was very, very strung out. Like, it was just strained out, long time, everything. But it was an extremely long match, but everything was full of excitement throughout. It kept you entertained, and that is the main thing. That is the main thing about Survivor Series, because you get to see people mix and match, and you know what? It really essentially doesn't matter who wins this, because, all in all, it is just for simple bragging rights. But Team SmackDown ended up winning this one after a pin from Bray Wyatt to Roman Reigns. So it was good to see that. But the next match that we have here is the main event. The one that everyone's talking about right now. And that's Bill Goldberg versus Brock Lesnar. And I have no notes for this one. I'm pretty much going to go off the cuff and tell you guys this. Toronto, Canada. Everyone's excited. Everyone wants to see the Beast take down Bill Goldberg. You have Bill Goldberg only having a one shot out. Talking about one spear, one jackhammer, one chance to defeat Brock Lesnar. Brock Lesnar is coming off of this amazing hot streak, beating Cena at SummerSlam, having a good WrestleMania outing with Roman Reigns, the Royal Rumble match he had with Seth Rollins and John Cena, beating The Undertaker at WrestleMania, beating The Streak. And then you have Bill Goldberg coming out in this one match, and he ends up beating Brock Lesnar in less than a minute and 30 seconds with 2 spears and a jackhammer. That, my friends, is wrestling. Unpredictable outcomes because of extended storylines, whatever. But that's the beauty of the sport that we have, ladies and gentlemen. That is wrestling. It's seeing Bill Goldberg get over on Brock Lesnar. It's seeing Bill Goldberg celebrate a victory with his son, with his family, because Bill Goldberg wanted his son to see him wrestle in front of a crowd, see how it was to be that Superman, to be that superhero. We all as fans want to be that son. We want to be that child that wrestling fathers get to allow them to see a match with whoever they fight. We wanted to be that. We wanted to be, I don't know, like Bret Hart's kid or whoever's kid, But we've wanted that situation in our hearts before. We've always wanted that. And WWE played a fair one and said, you know what, Brock, you're going to lose to Bill Goldberg with 2 spears and a jackhammer. Yeah, there's pretty much some outside situations going on with Bill Goldberg and the fact that he injured his shoulder the last week on Monday Night Raw. But the beauty of this, guys, is that we get to see something we haven't seen in a long time. We get to see the internet talking about wrestling again. We get to see people discuss stuff with us about wrestling. Like, what'd you think of that Bill Goldberg Brock Lesnar match? And people ask us of our opinion because we've been involved in it. We've been shocked. We've been riled up as far as it goes. But it's great to see this. I myself and my friends were shocked to see this outcome. But looking back at what it is, taking a step back and looking on from the outside looking in, you could see that this was done for the better in more ways than one. And that, my friends, is what wrestling is all about. And that's why it's pretty much one of the best sports out there, in my opinion anyway. Anyways, guys, this has been the review of NXT TakeOver and Survivor Series 2016. I am your host, Mark Flores. Please, I encourage you guys to listen to my other podcasts, Retro Collecting 101 for all you retro collectors out there. And if you guys like general film, entertainment, conspiracy theories, on the Spreaker.com Mark F Podcast channel link, you'll be taking to my other podcast as well. If you guys have any questions, make sure to hit me up on Instagram or Twitter. Mark F's Modern Life for Instagram, or on Twitter at Mark F's Podcast, the official Twitter account of the Mark F Podcast channel. I want to thank you guys for tuning in, and I'll see you guys at the next one. Take care.